Well, welcome along to Snetterton, everybody. Our third weekend of racing in the GT Cup Championship for 2024. It's cold, it's blustery, it almost feels autumnal here in Norfolk, but we've got our first race of the weekend coming up for you very shortly. Round 9 of the championship, the sprint race. It was only 2 weekends ago we were at Brands Hatch for the previous round, so let's look back at some of the highlights from a couple of weekends ago. And as the pace begins to build and they head over the start-finish line this time through, in fact it's Tom Rawlings who starts from pole position, not Charlotte Gilbert. I've just picked up on that based on the starting drivers. Up towards Paddock Hill Bend they'll go for the first time, and hopefully everybody will be safely through the first corner. So he'll be more than pleased with that. Now, Paul Bailey has got himself right up onto terms here with the GCAT Racing Porsche of Seamus Jennings. This will be for 4th and 5th position. Group GTO Brabham closing in on Group GT3 Porsche. No, but Charles Dawson has been able to sneak his way through and finally get past and ahead of Chris Hart. So that will now put the number 31 Team Parker Racing Mercedes for Top Cats Racing. It's going to be an overall win in round 5 of the 2024 GT Cup Championship. Over the start-finish line comes the Lamborghini Super Trofeo. Wait for the arrival of Ian Logie, who only second now at the wheel of the green Mercedes, heads over the start-finish line to finish in 2nd position and claim top honours in Group GTO, with Richard Chamberlain coming through, what, the matter of a couple of seconds later to finish in 3rd place overall. And Paul Bailey on the run to the line was right alongside Seamus Jennings. Did he get the Brabham's nose ahead? Well, the timing screen at the moment is saying that Seamus Jennings in the Porsche by 23 thousandths of a second. Lights go out, 40 minutes are on the clock. We get round 6 of the championship underway, and as they head up towards Paddock Hill Bend for the first time, Richard Chamberlain is going to brave it out around the outside. He is, because he needs to cover off the green Mercedes that sits behind him, which is Richard Neary, because Richard Neary, by the look of things, is going to move to 2nd and take the early lead of Group GTO. That's an off, I'm afraid, and that is going to be Stephen Walton that's had a problem. That's coming out of Clearway's corner. Park at 45 degrees. And then, because we are in the 19th minute of the race, he can come into the pit lane, Paul Bailey. Off's come in the rear bodywork, which hopefully isn't cause for concern. Maybe the... So, into the pit lane comes Richard Neary. Ian Logie about to jump on board that car, as Seb Morris should go through and ahead of Michael Arant. Yes, he does. Through goes the Team Parker Racing number 31 Mercedes. 29.6 seconds is the lead advantage, and that lap that we've just seen for David Brabham, fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 23.549. That is 2 seconds quicker than Greg Caton could manage at the wheel of the Porsche last time through. Richard Neary and Ian Logie win what will be round 6 of the 2024 GT Cup Championship here at Brands Hatch, with a mega performance from the pair of them. About to get round 7 of the championship underway. Our second pit stop race of the weekend is about to go green here at Brands Hatch. The Mercedes charge up towards Paddock Hill Bend for the first time, with Paul Bailey slotting in 2nd position at the wheel of the Brabham. They turn their way through Paddock Hill, and by the look of things there's a little bit of contact. Through 360 degrees goes Charles Dawson, and I think the car that made slight contact with him there was possibly the number 11, the McLaren Artura, in the hands of Michael Arant. So it looks as though Charles Dawson is going to have a lot of work to do to work his way back up through the field. And off and through the gravel trap has gone Ian Logie. So the man who was leading the way has gone off through the gravel trap. That was at Clearway's corner, which now means that the Brabham, in the hands of Paul Bailey, leads the way. And there is the damage to Michael Arant's Paddock Motorsport McLaren Artura. Looks as though Chris Murphy has a problem, so the Woodrow Motorsport E46 of Chris Murphy destined for the pit lane, surely. Yeah. Charles Dawson is back on it again. Can he squeeze his way through and ahead of Stephen Walton? The Team Parker Racing Porsche almost alongside, has the inside line, and again, perfect overtaking opportunity for Charles Dawson. He really is very keen on the brakes at Paddock Hill Bend and very confident. Stephen Walton is trying to fight back on the run up towards Druids, but can't quite work his magic. So it does look as though the Team Parker Mercedes has gone through and ahead of the Morpheus car. So David Brabham back down pit road, but he is coming out behind the Mercedes that's now in the hands of Richard Neary. So out onto the circuit comes the Brabham, But there is Richard Neary already making his way up towards Druids. He'll be knowing already where his car has the advantage over the Group GTO Mercedes. Mercedes runs in Group GTO, but it is fully compliant with GT3 specifications, so it hasn't got any air restrictors removed from it. They are just running it in GT3 to accumulate points in that category rather than GTO. So for the leader of the race, David Brabham in a straight line is going to ease his way through and by. And there wasn't a great deal that Richard Neary could do about that. The extra grunt of the Brabham BT62 tells, and through to not just pick up the lead of the race, but pick up the lead in Group GTO. The start-finish line is named after his late father, who 10 years to the day, very sadly passed away. But it's not a time for sadness, it's a time for celebration. David Brabham's going to come through and win round 7 of the 2024 GT Cup Championship, partnered up with Paul Bailey, who put a fantastic stint in the early stages. And remember, that car is running not a 5th gear, it's running a 6th gear in the place of 5th gear. Through to claim the top honours in Group GTH will come the number 9 Forseti Aston Martin, Matthew Higgins and Mikey Porter, bringing that car home. Over the start-finish line also comes Ian Loggie and Richard Neary. The 3rd place car of Seamus Jennings and Greg Caton comes through. Ray Harris's Ginetta over the start-finish line. He'll finish in 7th place, 3rd in Group GTC. Is somebody going to walk away with 2, or are we going to have 4 different winners out of the 4 races? Miles Rudman is absolutely flying. The red lights were on, but he's going to come over the start-finish line, leading the way, which has got me scratching my head a little bit there. For a man who knows how to do rolling starts, he got his foot down and just kept going there. Didn't ease off at all, so he leads, or was leading the way. They go up towards Druids for the first time. Diving up the inside comes Richard Neary. There's a little bit of jostling further back, but that's more just side-to-side movement of cars rather than anybody making contact with each other. Charlotte Gilbert, followed by Warren Gilbert, I think. Big spin, and that's contact and a puncture by the look of things for the number 11 McLaren of Michael Arant. Now, was that contact that caused the puncture and the damage? And it also looks as though there's damage to the front of that Mercedes, is there not? And this might be the opportunity here. Down through Dingledale, the Aston Martin has the inside line. Matthew Higgins goes through and picks up the lead of Group GTH. Then as they come downhill and in towards the braking area so that ties up why there's damage to the back end of the McLaren and why there's damage to the front end of the Aston Martin. That also sorts out as to why then the McLaren had the puncture. The Lamborghini is off to the inside of the circuit, so she's come out of Druids and it's spat the car over to the right-hand side of the circuit. Standings, and the 2 teammates have made contact with each other. John Curry and Stephen Walton have finally come together up at Druids. Quicker as over the start-finish line comes Richard Neary to claim the 2nd win of the weekend for the Team ABBA Racing Mercedes AMG GT3, and also picks up the win in Group GT3, Group GTO, I should say, that car runs in for this weekend. Here comes the Brabham of Paul Bailey, the BT62. Fantastic soundtrack that it makes. He will come through to finish in 2nd place. So the cars have made it out of pit lane onto the grid in advance of round 9 of the 2024 GT Cup Championship. Now this car here, the number 9 Forseti Motorsport car that's in the hands of Mikey Porter for this first sprint race, is leading the overall championship after the first 8 races. Only 1 minute to go, so it'll just be a quick word. It's all gone so well for you at the start of the championship.
Yeah, no, really good start to the season. First in the GT Cup. Can't really ask for much better, to be honest.
Well, have a good race, all the very best. Congratulations on how far they've done so well so far. So already we can see that the teams are leaving the grid area, which means it's time for us to leave the grid area. So whilst we leave the grid here at Snetterton, let's actually have a quick look at the configuration of the Snetterton 300 circuit. So let's have a look at the track. You go off the start-finish line and through 2 right-hand corners to start with, Ritchie's and the Wilson hairpin. From there, the circuit climbs slightly through the left-hander at Palmer, and then it's into the heavy braking area at Agostini. Quick left-hand flick at Hamilton, through Oggies, and then Williams is an important corner. You carry all the momentum out of there, down the Bentley Straight and into the tricky braking area at Brundle and Nelson. Flat out through the bomb hole and through Corham before you then get to the final corner, Murray's, up the start-finish line, and that is a lap of the Snetterton 300 circuit, which is just under 3 miles long, 2.969 miles. The circuit itself is built on an old RAF base, so it's fairly flat, just 9 metres of elevation change throughout the whole of the 3-mile lap. Some tight and some twisty and some technical sections, some flat out corners. There are 12 turns in total, and that's a lap of the Snetterton 300 circuit here in Norfolk. So the cars are on their formation lap in advance of the first of 4 races that we've got here this weekend. Sprint race coming up for you. Our pit stop race will take place later on today. So let's guide you through the grid then, and those drivers that are competing in this first race of the weekend. The teams nominate which driver will be driving the car, where it is shared across 2. So pole position went the way of Richard Neary in the Team Aber Racing Mercedes, and alongside is Paul Bailey in the Kendall Developments prepared Brabham. Row 2 of the grid is Tom Rawlings for Top Cats Racing with Hex.com, and alongside is Richard Chamberlain with the ever popular orange Porsche 935. Row 3 of the grid, it's Seamus Jennings that starts that car, and alongside is new to the championship. We'll tell you a little bit more about him as the race gets going. Fraser Fenwick that sits alongside, who joins Warren Gilbert in the second of the Lamborghinis this weekend from Top Cats. Row 4 of the grid, we spoke to him very briefly on the grid. Mikey Porter should be next up, and alongside will be Rhiannon O'Meara Hunt, and then it's Chris Murphy who's got Adam Hatfield, a former champion, returning to the championship for this weekend. Doc Bush is next up, alongside him is James Townsend, and the final row of the grid should see John Ingram line up alongside Peter Montague, who we've seen racing occasionally in this championship, but he's got plenty of sports car racing experience. So that's the way that the grid lines up. You can see just how breezy it is here at Snetterton. The Sunoco and the Snetterton flags disappearing almost off the flagpoles. It's so breezy, but thankfully it is dry here. It wasn't yesterday, but it's all overcast. We've got that strong breeze, as you can see, 31.5 kilometres. It's fairly warm ambient temperature and very little chance of rain today at least, albeit tomorrow looks slightly ominous again in terms of what we might see. So the cars are just working their way around through Coreham now, and we're getting ready for this 25-minute sprint race. Now, we've already seen a range of different cars win over the course of this season. The likes of the Team Aber Racing Mercedes have claimed wins overall. The GCAT Racing Porsche has claimed wins overall. We saw a win last time out for Tom Rawlings in the Top Cats Racing Lamborghini. He won the first of the sprint races at Brands Hatch. Of course, we've also seen a win for Kendall Developments. Paul Bailey and David Brabham shared Brabham BT62, but like to go out and away from round 9 of the championship and charge their way up towards Ritchie's for the first time, and it does look as though Paul Bailey has got himself ahead of Richard Neary as they turn their way through Ritchie's for the first time. Both of these cars running in Group GTO, and also Tom Rawlings in the Top Cats Racing Lamborghini has slotted his way through into 3rd place, and Richard Chamberlain is there in 4th, with Fraser Fenwick sitting there in 5th, having his first ever race in this Lamborghini, having only tested it yesterday for the first time, and as largely Fraser Fenwick in the second of the 2 Top Cats Racing Lamborghinis, graduated out of racing Mark 1 Mazda MX-5s. So he is fairly new to slicks and wings racing, and certainly hasn't driven anything this powerful in the past. The previous car he drove on slicks with a bit of a couple of seasons ago. But certainly impressed with the car yesterday and impressed the team with the performance in it. But it is the Brabham that leads the way. Paul Bailey, already a race winner. He is the reigning champion, proudly carrying the number 1 on the BT62. Still being shadowed by Richard Neary in the early stages as they then start to turn their way through the right-hander and down the big long Bentley straight, which one would have thought would probably favour the Brabham, who should, in a straight line, maybe just edge away a little bit from the Team Aber Racing Mercedes. So underneath the vehicle bridge in towards the left-hander at Brundle, then it's the right-hander at Nelson. Fraser Fenwick there in 5th place. Then it's the GCAT Racing Porsche of Seamus Jennings, and Group GTH in the early stages. Looks like it's a Forsetti Motorsport 1-2, the 2 Aston Martins. Chris Murphy at the wheel of his ever-present BMW E46 M3 is next up. Jolt Racing, the sole car in Group GTA for this weekend, is in the hands of John Ingram, who's returned to the championship, but for the lead of the race, pretty much nose to tail as they went in towards Murray's that time through. But in a straight line, the Brabham once more just edges away from the Mercedes, so Paul Bailey still continues to lead. Qualifying this morning, he told me he had been round here 3 seconds faster in that car than he'd ever been round Snetterton before. So he was more than happy with the way that the car was performing in his hands. And for the moment, he'll be more than happy that he's leading the way from Richard Neary there in second place, with in third place the car that leads Group GTC, Tom Rawlings. Richard Neary just running a little bit wide there coming out of the Wilson hairpin. Brake lights flash on as they pitch their way through the left-hander at Palmer and then build the speeds down the short straight in towards the heavy braking area for the left-hand hairpin at Agostini. So all of this will be into side winds. The way that the wind is blowing today, it's almost a northerly wind that we've had over the course of the last couple of days. So as you come through Ritchie's and turn right at Ritchie's at the first corner, you're into a headwind up to the Wilson hairpin. It's been a very unusual direction for the wind to be at Snetterton. They'll get a tailwind at this section, and then as they turn round through the right-hander at Oggies, you're back into the headwind again up this little section up towards the Bentley Straight, and it's a side wind again as you head down the Bentley Straight, which is where they'll be going now. And all of this strong breeze that we've got will be affecting the cars and will be affecting the way that the teams and the drivers set up their cars so as to make sure the wind has positive effects rather than negative effects on the handling of the cars. So up towards Brundle and Nelson on lap number 2. Paul Bailey still leading Group GTO and leading overall, still being shadowed by Richard Neary in the Group GTO Mercedes. Then in third place it's the lead car in Group GTC, which is Tom Rawlings. Richard Chamberlain in the orange Porsche is fourth, he runs in Group GTO. Fifth place is Fraser Fennick, another Group GTC car, and it's a Group GT3 car that sits there in sixth at the moment, which is Seamus Jennings, but we're still nose to tail again. So in the straight line the Brabham has the advantage, but through the twiddly parts, the extra, probably homologated GT3 Aero of the Mercedes seems to have the upper hand. But over the course of the lap here at Snetterton, which is just under 3 miles, it's 2.9689 miles, Snetterton, so just shy of 3 miles. Looks as though they are pretty much matched for pace. So onto the brakes, through the Wilson hairpin, nice and clean between the leading pair still. They've opened up the best part of almost a 3.5 second gap now between themselves and the lead Lamborghini of Tom Rawlings, who sits there in third position. So along the straight and up towards the braking area for Agostini on lap number 3 with 20 minutes still remaining. Also there's another good fight going on for 5th and 6th place. Fraser Fennick in the second of the two Top Cats Lamborghinis is not that far up the road from the GCAT Racing Porsche of Seamus Jennings, as they fight for who wants to be 5th and who wants to be 6th. And leading Group GTH, which is for the GT4 homologated cars, is the man we spoke to on the grid, which is Mikey Porter, at the wheel of the number 9 Forsetti Motorsport Aston Martin, for which this is very much a local track for Forsetti. You head out of the circuit, past the entrance booths, and their factory and workshop is immediately the first unit that you get to on the left-hand side, so they are literally on the doorstep. They probably didn't need to bring the truck to Snetterton, they could have pushed the cars down the runway and into the paddock. There's number 11, that's in the hands of Adam Hadfield, former champion in GT Cup, being chased around the circuit by the Ginetta of James Townsend, the G56, run by Andy Johnson's SVG Motorsport team. And in a straight line, looks as though Ginetta and McLaren are pretty much matched for pace. Adam Hatfield returning to the championship this weekend. That number 11 car has largely been shared by Michael Arendt and Jake Poole over the course of the season, but Jake not able to be present at Snetterton this weekend, so Adam Hatfield, the 2018 champion, jumps on board. Adam Hatfield claiming that championship when he was partnered up with Chris Murphy, who is also in the race, but Chris is driving his BMW that lies just ahead, actually. So it's the 2018 champion Chris Murphy in the BMW being chased by the 2018 champion who he shared with that year, which is Adam Hatfield at the wheel of the number 11 McLaren. Then James Townsend, who sits behind. So these cars will be fighting over what is going to be 9th, 10th and 11th places. Group GTC BMW being chased by Group GTH McLaren, being chased by Group GTH Ginetta. So they flick their way out of Ritchie's and then into the heavy braking area for the Wilson hairpin. Keep the car nice and tight into the apex. Make sure you push the car out as wide as you can on the exit, but not too wide. James Townsend working hard to see whether he can just close up that very small gap that exists between himself and the McLaren that lies ahead, but equally as much Adam Hatfield will be driving the wheels off the Paddock Motorsport prepared machine. Now Adam is a pro sporting driver, which means that it's only in the sprint race today that he can compete in. Tomorrow any of the pro sporting drivers cannot be involved in the sprint race. It has to be the pure sporting drivers, or the AMs as they've been known in other categories. So good to see Adam Hatfield back in the championship, and good to see that he is keeping up with Chris Murphy who is, say, the two of them claimed the overall championship, and Aston Martin back in 2018 when they shared. James Townsend still not too far away, and for the lead of the race, Paul Bailey cannot shake away Richard Neary. Again, you can see just how much Mercedes closes up through the twiddly parts and on the brakes within the straight line. The Brabham has the advantage. So the cars complete the lap of Snetterton at almost identical times, but the way that they complete the lap is very different indeed. The Brabham quick in a straight line, but doesn't quite have the handling. And maybe because, of course, it's travelling at a faster speed and is a slightly heavier car, one would have thought. Of course, he has to get on the brakes slightly earlier as well, so that's why the gap concertina's up as they go in towards the corners. 17 minutes of the race still to go. Lead advantage exactly 0.6 of a second between Paul Bailey and Richard Neary. And they are at the moment on lap number 5. So again, up towards the braking area for Agostini. So far this season, we have seen an overall win for the Brabham. That came in the Sunday race at Brands Hatch, the first of the 2 races we had, which was the pit stop race. And for the car that is trying to hunt it down, which is Richard Neary, we have for that car so far seen a good amount of wins for that car. It won the opening round of the championship, the first sprint race of the season at Donington Park, and then at Brands Hatch last time out it won the pit stop race on the Saturday and the sprint race on the Sunday. So it's had 3 overall wins so far this year, the Mercedes. Single overall win for the Brabham so far, but the two of them are still rooted together. Now, down the straight this time, I think we are probably potentially going to see new fastest laps of the race from both of these cars. The best lap of the race we've had so far is from the Brabham, 1 minute 50.372. Now, the Mercedes behind, its best lap is a 1 minute 50.384, so you can see that there's just 11 1/1000ths of a second difference between the fastest laps that each one of these cars has set so far. But through the first and the second sector, looks as though they have both travelled quicker than they've previously gone. And it really closes up as they head round through Murray's that time through. Are we going to see a new fastest lap of the race this time? They're pushing each other round, that's for sure. The Brabham sets the fastest lap of the race. For a split second later, Richard Neary to take it away. So Paul Bailey did a 1 minute 50.175. Richard Neary, a split second later, comes over the start-finish line, does a 1 minute 50.122. So that's the fastest lap of the race. There is an extra point available if you set the fastest lap in your respective group. So at the moment, it's the Mercedes that picks up the extra point for the fastest lap. Paul Bailey, who leads the way, will be picking up the maximum points for the group win potentially, if they stay where they are. So down the straight again and up towards Agostini. Heavy onto the brakes, in towards the left-hander. You can see there goes Tom Rawlings. He still continues to lead Group GTC in the number 2 Top Cats Racing with Hex.com Lamborghini Huracan that runs to Super Trofeo specification. So Group GTC is for the Cup spec cars. So in other words, if it's a 911 Cup car, or it's maybe a Ferrari Challenge car, or a Lamborghini Super Trofeo car, it would run in Group GTC for the Cup cars. If it's an open category car, it runs in Group GTO, which these two do, the Brabham and the Mercedes. Now, the Merc could also run in Group GT3, but for this season, even though it is still fully GT3 compliant in terms of its balance of performance and the air restrictors that they've got on it, they've kept them all on, and they are running in Group GTO because largely for this season we've had more entrants in Group GTO and therefore more points can be picked up. So this is for the overall lead. It is for the lead of Group GTO as well for the open specification cars. And for Paul Bailey, he has not had any respite at all. The gap was 0.6 of a second. It came down to 0.54 of a second this time through. It looks as though Paul Bailey might be on for the fastest lap of the race because he set an absolute best first and second sector and gets into the 1 minute 49s, as does Richard Neary. They both set their best individual laps of the race so far, but now Paul Bailey picks up the extra championship point for the fastest lap. 1 minute 49.596 from him compared to 1 minute 49.750 from Richard Neary behind. So fastest lap time bouncing around as each one of these hugely experienced drivers pushes each other to the limit. There goes through shot now Fraser Fennick, and from Lincoln, who I was chatting to earlier on. I live in Lincoln, and by the sounds of things, the crow flies, he probably lives about 2 miles away from me. I've never met him before, so we had a good catch up earlier on. He is under pressure from Seamus Jennings at the wheel of the GCAT Racing Porsche that sits behind, number 33 car. That continues to lead Group GT3. Through Hamilton goes Richard Neary and Paul Bailey. Paul Bailey positioning the car so as to prevent a gap appearing for Richard Neary. Richard sharing the car with Ian Loggy over the course of this weekend. Paul Bailey sharing with David Brabham, who last weekend was driving a historic car at Brands Hatch with great effect, but will jump into the car that he had huge input into the build of, Brabham Automotive and the BT62. So through Brundle, through Nelson, halfway through this race now, 25-minute race, 12.5 minutes remain, and still absolutely nothing to choose between first and second place, and they're still matching each other for pace. Richard Neary, absolute best first sector. Paul Bailey, absolute best second sector. They are still pushing each other around. You can see the gap again close as they come round through Murray's. 7 tenths of a second advantage first to second place. Looks as though it is not going to change a great deal this time through. So over the start-finish line, it comes down to 6 tenths of a second, but 6.5 tenths in reality. And it's a new fastest lap of the race, this time for Richard Neary in second place. 1 minute 49.539 from him, which is about 50 thousandths of a second quicker than Paul Bailey managed that time through. So the gap comes down, but by a very small amount. And again, Richard Neary there almost drew himself alongside, but that was on the exit of Wilson. Then the car sort of got away from him a little bit, a very slight wiggle. And that just allows Paul Bailey once more to edge away in the lead of the race at the wheel of the Brabham. Brilliant stuff for the lead. So in towards the braking area for Agostini once more. You can see all of the time they're edging away ever more from the Lamborghini of Tom Rawlings that sits there in the background of the longer shots that you can see. He still continues to lead Group GTC. Group GT3 still being led by Seamus Jennings, and Richard Neary's got the inside line going in towards Oggies. No, he thought about it. Paul Bailey just got it covered off in time. So now as they head up towards Williams, the pendulum swings back in favour of the Brabham, that's quicker in the straight lines by the look of things than the Mercedes. So Paul Bailey should just edge away again a shade. We've still got leading Group GTH at this stage, the number 9 Forsetti Motorsport Aston Martin in the hands of Mikey Porter, and he leads that by about 4 seconds at the moment from the sister car to it, which will be Rihanna O'Meara Hunt, the Kiwi. And third in that will be Adam Hatfield at the moment, who's sitting 10th overall and therefore will be third in Group GTH. So here is Adam Hatfield. You can see he's pulled away from the Ginetta that was in the hands of James Townsend, has now closed right up onto the coattails of Chris Murphy at the wheel of the BMW. I say these two shared an Aston Martin to, between them, secure the overall 2018 championship in GT Cup. Well, here they are now driving very different cars and going up against each other, fighting over who wants to be 9th and who wants to be 10th at the moment. The BMW runs in Group GTC, such is its performance. The McLaren runs in Group GTH, and in a straight line you would have thought the Beamer should pull away, but it's not quite going to have the same amount of aero, I wouldn't have thought, as the McLaren. And of course it's a slightly heavier car as well, so through the twiddly parts I would imagine the McLaren might just have the edge. And the Brabham, now in for the lead of the race, has got the edge because it is pulling away from Richard Neary. They're about to catch the first of the back markers, which will be Peter Montague at the wheel of his Aston Martin. So he moves neatly out of the way, allows the Brabham to go through. Richard Neary meets that same car, but just on the exit of Hamilton. So that's both first and second safely past the MKH Racing Aston Martin Vantage GT4. Peter Montague sharing that car for the pit stop races with pro driver Stuart Hall, who just a couple of weekends ago secured victory at Monaco in a Formula 1 car in the Monaco Historique meeting. But Stuart has got plenty of experience when it comes to driving more contemporary cars as well. The battle for the leader race looks to have closed up a little bit. Had pulled away, hadn't it? Paul Bailey had opened up a 1.1 second gap between himself and Richard Neary over the course of the previous lap, but with a bit of traffic and Richard Neary pushing hard again on this lap, looks as though the gap has certainly closed down again. Is Richard Neary going to try anything on the brakes going in towards Murray's? I think probably not, because I think he knows if he tries something there, then in a straight line the Brabham's just going to find its way through and past again. So back over the start finish line with 8.5 minutes to go. Paul Bailey still leading the way, still looking to try and secure his first sprint victory of the season. So the Brabham did claim a win, but that was in the pit stop race at Brands Hatch last time out, when Paul Bailey and David Brabham collectively took the win. Paul has not claimed a sprint win so far this season, And that could be important for him because that would add to the tally for the Sprint Challenge points, which he lies 5th in coming into this weekend in the Sprint Challenge Championship points. The Brabham itself also lies 5th overall in the championship. So again, down that short unnamed straight in towards the braking area for Agostini. See just how overcast the skies are here. And that looked like Richard Neary ran wide there. Yep, so ran very wide indeed, was pushing a bit too hard. He had just gone absolute best through the first sector, Richard Neary, but those Pirellis now are going to have plenty of Norfolk grass on them. They will need cleaning up again over the course of the next few corners, and that has somewhat undone some of the hard work he'd been doing, applying the pressure to Paul Bailey. So they matched each other pretty much for pace through the first sector of the lap. 33.980 from Richard Neary, 33.982 from Paul Bailey, 2/1000ths of a second, but that grassy moment has cost Richard Neary 1.8 seconds, I'm afraid. Back towards what's going on for 9th and 10th as well. Chris Murphy still doing a good job of palming away the aspirations of Adam Hatfield. BMW still running in 9th place overall. That will put it 3rd in Group GTC. And the McLaren that sits behind runs 3rd in Group GTH in the hands of Adam Hadfield, the Paddock Motorsport Artura. So those two rolling up their sleeves and getting on with it. You can see just how much James Townsend had fallen away at the wheel of the Ginetta, which looks to not quite have the same race pace. What's the drop-off been on that Ginetta? James Townsend, fastest at 57.6. He's now lapping about a second slower than that, whereas the two cars ahead, in the case of Adam Hatfield, is still only lapping about half a second, 0.4 of a second slower than his best so far. So we've not seen a great deal of drop-off at all on the McLaren. So it's clearly a good setup on that car, which is seeing it able to maintain its pace throughout this first 20 minutes, there or thereabouts now, of the 25-minute sprint race. So Chris Murphy still in 9th, Adam Hadfield still in 10th place. James Townsend just out of the top 10 in 11th position. That would put him, what's that going to be, 4th in Group GTH. And then it's going to be Doc Bush in 12th place. 13th place is going to be John Ingram, and 14th place, I think, at the moment, Peter Montague, therefore, at the wheel of number 50, Aston Martin from MKH Racing. So 5 minutes to go. Here's our Group GTH leading car. So there's Mikey Porter at the wheel of the first of the two Forsetti Motorsport cars that we've got in the field. Black car with the Dayglow green flashes to it. You can see a brief lock of brakes there as well as he went in towards the braking area for the Wilson hairpin. The sister car to it in the hands of Rihanna O'Meara Hunt sits 2nd in Group GTH at the moment, is running in 8th place overall. So this is the local team. Literally their factory is on the doorstep of Snetterton. The new units that have been built just as you come down the old runway. So there's the first of the Forsetti cars, and there is Rhiannon O'Meara Hunt, her first ever trip to Snetterton, the Kiwi. Every time she gets to a circuit, it's a brand new circuit she's not raced at. Of course, we are back here at Snetterton later on in the season for the final. We also go back to Donington Park as well, but we open the season on the national circuit. We'll close it on the Grand Prix circuit at Donington Park, whereas for Snetterton it's the same configuration both times. I was chatting to Rhiannon and to Mikey earlier on as well, and Matthew Higgins, and saying the one good thing is, I suppose, with certain simulators, iRacing for instance, you've got the Aston Martin Vantage GT4 as one of the cars available in iRacing. You've got all of the circuits on which we race in GT Cup on iRacing, and therefore a lot of these drivers are spending a lot of time on their own sims at home just to get used to the car and the track combination. And whilst it doesn't teach you everything, it about gets you there. And that's problems for the Brabham. All of a sudden Paul Bailey starts to slow, and through goes Richard Neary for the lead of the race. So, oh, such a shame. The BT62 had been going beautifully well in the hands of Paul Bailey, and he'd been soaking up all of the pressure that could be thrown at him by Richard Neary, but I'm afraid something has gone wrong with the Brabham. Let's hope it's just a small mechanical issue, because that car in previous seasons has been slightly troubled. But Paul Bailey is not going to try and limp the car back round to the pit lane. He pulls off well onto the grass at Oggie's Corner, and I'm afraid the race leader, the BT62 Brabham, in the hands of Paul Bailey, is out of the race. And now that means that Richard Neary enjoys a very sizable, 15-16 second lead he'll have now over Tom Rawlings, who will move up into 2nd position. And now it'll also mean that Richard Chamberlain, who we haven't seen a great deal of at the wheel of the beautiful looking, you can't miss it, orange Porsche 935, moves up into the top 3. And for Richard Chamberlain, that would equal his best finish of the season so far. Donington he withdrew very late. Brands Hatch he only completed in one of the races. He didn't finish the second and then wasn't able to start the next couple. So Richard Neary, who's been a ever-present entrant in GT Cup over the last few seasons, in without question the oldest car in the field, is looking as though he is on course for 3rd position here, but he's got to keep pushing hard because right behind him is now going to be Fraser Fenwick. So those 2 cars over the start-finish line. There's Paul Bailey stepping out of the Brabham. Here's Richard Chamberlain up to 3rd place. Fraser Fenwick right behind him in 4th position. Fraser running 2nd in Group GTC for the Cup specification cars at the wheel of the Top Cats Racing with Hex.com Lamborghini Super Trofeo. And trying to hunt down that bright orange flame-spitting Porsche 935 in the hands of Richard Chamberlain. Always fantastic to see that car out. It's a real crowd favourite as well. So you watch out for those flames. When he lifts off the gas, you'll be able to see huge amounts of flame come out the back of the car. The unburnt fuel just igniting as it comes out of the tailpipes of the car. You can see in the background the yellow flag still being waved, so there'll be no overtaking on the way in towards Oggie's corner. There's those spits of flames again from Richard Neary as he gets off the throttle. So there's no overtaking at this point of the circuit, so Fraser Fenwick can do nothing about the Porsche that lies ahead. As we now enter the final 90 seconds of round 9 of the 2024 GT Cup Championship. So the way it works in the regulations for this year is Saturday it's sprint race first, followed by pit stop race, and then tomorrow we do it the opposite way round. It's the pit stop race that will come first tomorrow, followed by the sprint race. That's the way the regulations work for the 2024 Championship, and that is a change to previous years. Now Richard Chamberlain looked to run a little bit wide there through Nelson. Maybe a little bit of understeer mid-corner or whatever happened. He just didn't quite, I don't think, get the car turned in as you would have expected. There's a bit of traffic up the road as well that he might just need to deal with, and he'll be hoping that he meets that traffic down the centre straight, as our race leader, Richard Neary, will now be on to his final lap of the race. So over the start-finish line goes Richard Chamberlain. There's the traffic ahead, which is the John Ingram Jolt Racing McLaren 570S, and where are they going to meet that? It's going to be after Richie's corner, but on the run in towards Wilson, which will please Richard Chamberlain, that hopefully he'll be able to sneak his way through without having to move offline too much. So up the inside, heading in towards the Wilson hairpin. Fraser Fenwick also looks to utilise the opportunity to get past the back marker whilst the McLaren is offline. So the gap between the pair of them still remains the same as they head round through the left-hander at Palmer for the final time. So the clock has now ticked to 0. Richard Chamberlain feeling the pressure for the final spot on the overall podium. And Fraser Fenwick, I would imagine, will be very pleased, as will Top Cats Racing, with what he's been able to do in this race so far. You know, never really having driven the car at all until yesterday. And here he is, looking to try and get himself onto the overall podium. Is impressive stuff. So new team, new car, hasn't really done a great deal of racing on slick tyres before. Impressive stuff from the young man from Lincoln. So out of Oggie's up towards Williams, try and get a good exit coming off the corner. The GTC spec Lamborghini is not short of horsepower, but neither is the Porsche, and as they head down in towards Brundle and Nelson, Richard Neary, our overall race leader, should, I would have thought, be going through the bomb hole or the Coram potentially for the final time. In fact, he comes out of Murray's for the final time, and he's going to head over the start-finish line. It looks so it's going to be the 4th overall win of the season for the Team ABBA Racing Mercedes, whether it be in the hands of Richard Neary and Loggie or both. But it's Richard Neary on this occasion that drives the car, so he comes through to grab the win. It's going to be Tom Rawlings that will finish in 2nd place, but who's going to finish in 3rd position? Has Fraser Fenwick got anything up his sleeve that he can throw at Richard Chamberlain? And as they go in towards the braking area for Murray's, Richard Chamberlain is quick coming off the corner, and I think probably just has a slight advantage in terms of straight line speed. So it is going to be Richard Chamberlain that comes through to equal his best finish of the season so far. But what a debut in GT Cup for Fraser Fenwick, who chased him and shadowed him all the way in the closing stages to come through to finish in 4th position and scoop up 2nd in Group GTC. There's the Group GT3 winning car, Seamus Jennings, the number 33 Porsche over the start-finish line. And then we just need to await for our winner of Group GTH to come over the start-finish line, which should be Mikey Porter. who will come through to scoop up the win in Group GTH. He will be at the wheel of the number 9 Aston Martin. But for Team ABBA Racing, that is more championship points heading in their direction. They lay 3rd in the overall championship standings coming into this weekend. And the car that Richard Neary had been doing battle with, Paul Bailey, frustrated spectator talking to the marshals, I'm afraid, out there at Oggies with whatever problem befell the Brabham. Hopefully that will be able to be sorted by Kendall Developments, and we'll see that car back out for our pit stop race later on. There is the winner of Group GTH. So Mikey Porter claims more points for himself and for Setti Motorsport, and of course his co-driver Matthew Higgins, and that's important for them because they do lead the overall championship points standings coming into this weekend. And the battle still continues from the 2 former champions, as Chris Murphy just heads over the start-finish line, but was ever shadowed by Adam Hadfield, who kept him very honest, didn't he, all the way throughout the race. James Townsend next over the start-finish line. He'll be classified as finishing as the final place inside the top 10. That'll put him 4th in Group GTH, and I think that is all the cars now having come through to take the checkered flag at the end of round 9 of the 2024 GT Cup Championship. So it's 4 overall wins now for Richard Neary and Ian Loggy. They've also had, what I think, 3 second places as well. So it's been a good season for them, really. The only blip really they had was at Donington Park Sunday races there, where they had poor finish in one race and didn't finish the other. So that's good championship points for them. Good championship points also for the number 2 Lamborghini of Top Cats Racing, Charlotte Gilbert and Tom Rawlings, as they win their group again, and they lie 2nd in the overall championship standings. So all of those that are at the sharp end of the championship have done well there. So we should be able to confirm the results for you then following round 9 of the 2024 GT Cup Championship. Richard Neary comes through to claim the win in the end by nearly 12 seconds from Tom Rawlings, who finishes in 2nd and scoops up top honours in Group GTC. 3rd was Richard Chamberlain, but he was chased all the way to the start-finish line by Fraser Fennick, making his debut with the team and in GT Cup, who finishes in 4th place. Seamus Jennings was first home in GT3 to finish in 5th place, and Group GTH was claimed by the number 9 car in the hands of Mikey Porter for Setti Motorsport. Rhiannon O'Meara Hunt was 7th, ahead of Chris Murphy in 8th place, who had a brilliant battle with Adam Hatfield, who was there in 9th place. And James Townsend with the Ginetta completes the top 10. Then as we move outside of the top 10, in 11th place, it was Doc Bush. 12th place went the way of John Ingram, with Peter Montague in 13th place, the last of the finishers. And for Paul Bailey, leading the race, but I'm afraid it was retirement for the Brabham BT62. So that's it from Snetterton. That is it from round 9 of the championship. There is Richard Neary just chatting to the team at the moment. Looks rather warm, doesn't he, after his efforts in round 9 of the championship, but he'll be very, very pleased indeed. We are scheduled to see our pit stop race head out onto the circuit at around about 4 o'clock this afternoon, which means our live stream is probably going to be going live about 3:45, something like that. So thanks for joining us for the pit stop race. Try not to go too far away though, because we're back later on this afternoon for our pit stop race. So from everybody here at Snetterton, we'll see you later on this afternoon. Goodbye.